was missional AI that really convicted us that, somebody really needs to show up well and start to organize resourcing and start to advance meaningful research in this area, solving some of the problems that came out of a missional AI many years ago.
We ran some of the largest hackathons, mass collaborations, open innovation communities that have ever existed in the world. And it was really good work. However, it's like, man, what if we could apply that to the church? What if we apply that to God's kingdom? Why don't we do that? Why do we have to keep these things separated? It's happening so fast. And so we're deeply concerned and convicted that we don't want to miss this moment. We want to step into this moment. We want to shape technology for good.
And that was his vision for the hackathon. He'd always wanted to do it. One of the first calls we made was to Nick and Allie, and the rest is sort of history. But that's like one of our goals, is to enable the faith ecosystem with these advanced technologies. Now, the other side of that coin is to influence the AI communities with faith.
This episode is brought to you by Gloo. As AI continues to reshape how organizations engage, communicate, and serve people, Gloo is helping the faith and flourishing ecosystem build technology with both innovation and trust in mind. Through Gloo AI Studio, mission-driven builders can access production-grade AI infrastructure designed to support values-aligned innovation, including multi-model access, observability tools, and infrastructure built for real ministry and human-centered applications. From ministry assistance to language tools and donor engagement systems, organizations are already building AI solutions that support people, not just productivity. To learn more or start building with Gloo AI Studio, visit studio.ai.gloo.com. That's studio.ai.gloo.com. And thanks again to Gloo for supporting this podcast and the broader Missional AI movement. Welcome back to another episode of the Missional AI Podcast. I'm your host, James Poulter, but in this episode, it's not me doing the interview, it is our dear friend Josiah, and he sits down with Steele Billings and Nick Skytland from the team at Gloo. You probably know who Gloo are by now, but if you do not, Gloo are an amazing AI company based in Boulder, Colorado, but working around the world now to lead the AI movement in the faith and flourishing part of this community. They are really thinking about the future of how does AI support human flourishing through building technology, connecting the global ecosystem, supporting developers through all sorts of projects, including Missional AI, but also their global hackathon that happens every October, which is happening this October in Boulder, Colorado as well. Nick has come from an amazing background working at NASA, and he has so much to give us and learning from that. And Steele comes from this amazing background of working both in the faith and business ecosystem, from startups to leading Gloo AI, where he now is the person really in charge of all of that's happening there at Gloo. So I think this is going to be a really great conversation for you guys to dig into. Do hang around to the end of the episode to find out more about what we've got coming up in the global Missional AI community over the coming weeks, including Missional AI London that is coming up on the 15th of July in London. You can go get your tickets for that at missional.ai. They're running out, so do act fast. But for now, I want to leave you in the capable hands of Josiah for this episode, where you get to talk to Nick and Steele. I think you're going to enjoy this. Go Knicks.
So today I have the honor of interviewing Nick and Steele, both with Gloo, and we're going to talk about some amazing things. They have fascinating backstories on how they got involved in AI that range from NASA to the hills of Tennessee. And we are going to be discussing kind of the future of AI and how it overlaps with Christianity and faith, and also just some new developments that are coming out of this organization, Gloo, which is quickly becoming one of the most influential AI-adjacent organizations in the entire world. I've been reading about it in magazines like The Economist and other secular periodicals in different places, and there's a lot of questions about who is Gloo, what are you guys doing, what are you up to, and I cannot wait to dig into that. But before we do that, Nick and Steele, could you guys introduce yourselves and talk about your role at Gloo a little bit? And Steele, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, excited to be here as well. Josiah, thank you for that introduction. And I'll start by saying how much we absolutely love Missional AI and the work that God is doing through this group and this community that began as a conference or just an event, and it's turned into a community and a movement. And so, we absolutely love Missional AI.
When I'm walking in the hallways, so we are live right now from Silicon Valley, and when I walk through the hallways, a lot of people come out here just for the family reunion aspect, because there's so many people with a shared value system trying to ask hard questions about how do we use AI for the glory of God. So it's really exciting to be here.
Well, I'll tell you, you talk about family reunion, but in the room today, when somebody said, raise your hand if this is your first time, the majority of people here this year are first timers.
That is true.
And actually, most people don't know this, but back before there was Gloo AI, there was just something called Gloo X. And actually, the catalyst for changing the name to Gloo AI was our first experience at Missional AI several years ago. And it was Missional AI that really convicted us that, somebody really needs to show up well and start to organize resourcing and start to advance meaningful research in this area, solving some of the problems that came out of a Missional AI many years ago.
So Steele, tell me a little bit about your role with Gloo. First, just for background, sorry to interrupt, but tell us also, high level, what is Gloo?
Yeah, Gloo is a technology company based in Boulder, Colorado, and we exist to serve the faith and the flourishing ecosystem, to really connect all of the organizations across faith and flourishing. And when we say faith and flourishing, obviously the first thing that comes to mind are the 450,000 faith-based organizations that are mostly churches in the United States. But we think, in addition to the churches, we think about the parachurch ministries. We think about the organizations, the anti-trafficking organizations that are out there on the front lines. We think about student ministries and those types of organizations. So we serve across all of those organizations that are really doing what we believe is solving for God's design for human flourishing. Now, my role specifically at Gloo, I've been at Gloo since 2018, and I've been most recently serving as the president of Gloo AI. So we get to do all the fun stuff with just understanding what are God's purposes for this radical new technology. And it's something I've been doing most of my career. I began about 15 years ago with a company called Shelby. Shelby was the first software company that was ever written for ministry. And that began this sort of domino effect that I found myself in, of understanding how do advanced technologies get applied to ministry and God's purposes. Everything from cloud computing to fintech to mobile apps, to then machine learning and big data, and now artificial intelligence. And a lot of the same patterns, but I will say AI is different. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it and be a part of this community.
And we'll talk more about that. I'm really curious to hear Gloo's perspective on this issue, because you guys really are becoming just like a key player in what does it mean to be a Christian ministry that's actually trying to change the world using emerging AI technology. So before we get into that, though, Nick, give us a little bit of background on who you are, where you come from, and your role with Gloo.
Yeah, so I'm also very thankful to be here. Very thankful to get to work with Steele at Gloo in AI. He called a couple years ago. We got to know each other through the hackathon, which we'll talk about more. And I'd been at NASA. I was there for 25 years before exiting and retiring last year. And it was really good work. I mean, I really had a front row seat to just the advancements in technology, oversaw a portfolio of technology and innovation at NASA that ranged from robotics to quantum. And it was really good work, but I think what we're doing here in this AI moment is really great work. And so Steele and I had a conversation about 70 weeks ago, and I think it's important to measure it in weeks because, Gloo is interesting in that it straddles.
It's like a baby.
Well, it's just so fast moving, right? Yeah. And I think we straddle this unique intersection between the church and the AI industry. And maybe the church doesn't move so fast, but the AI industry sure does. And I think it's probably better to measure it in weeks, because even the models themselves are released and they're out of date in 2 months, right? It's happening so fast. And so we're deeply concerned and convicted that we don't want to miss this moment. We want to step into this moment. We want to shape technology for good. So when Steele called and said, hey, Nick, would you be interested in joining my team at Gloo? I was like, let's do this. I mean, I love the passion and the mission and the people. And I had a chance to see it up close and personal at the hackathon for a couple of years prior to joining Gloo, and it's every bit of it is true, and it's a really exciting time.
You should tell more of that story, though.
I would love to hear more of that story.
Just even like why you're here was, I believe, such a God thing.
Yeah. What are you thinking about here?
You got an email with the rest of the federal government one day.
Yeah, well, so there was a lot of change in the federal government in early 2025, and everyone got an email, and I was at the time leading a very large couple $1 billion portfolio, hundreds of people, agency-wide thing is really exciting at the moment. But the email afforded me the opportunity to really kind of step back and say, man, if you were to, as a technologist, really kind of give up the comfort of something that I've done for 25 years and press into kind of the unknown but very kingdom focused work. If you're willing to serve and use your talent for the kingdom and let God kind of direct that story, like where is that adventure going to take you to?
What damage could you do to the kingdom of darkness?
Maybe. Yeah. Yes. And I love working on the frontiers. Yeah. I love being on the very, very frontier where everybody else is like, man, I'm kind of scared about that. I'm going to kind of wait to see what happens. Yeah. And so, that email was like, man, this is the opportunity to take that moment. We often talk about the book Halftime. It's something that I would give to my friends who are retiring, like proper retirement. And I said, hey, you've worked your entire career for this moment. What would it look like if you used it, if you let God use you in big ways? Wow. And so for me, that was the moment that it became true for me, where I was like, you know what? I don't think I have to wait till I
retire. Like I can actually jump into
right now.
Something meaningful that I want to. I mean, you spent literally decades doing what most of us would call rocket science.
I think he's calling me old. He's calling me old.
No, but I'm not at all. I'm just actually, I mean, in this moment, I'm feeling legitimately excited by the comment that you made about spending a career doing something that you loved, but also gaining a bunch of skills that you recognize, oh my gosh, I know things that could change the world in a way that I haven't up to this point been able to accomplish just because I've been in a framework of serving an organization's mission, which is a good thing. But suddenly actually catching a dream from God for something beyond that is like wildly exciting.
But even there,
story.
I don't mean to keep interrupting.
Please, no.
even there, it's what's so cool is there's only so many times in your life where it's so obvious that God's hand is on something, and it's also so validating and so rewarding when God gives you that. And Nick joining and Allie joining was one of those moments, honestly, where Pat Gelsinger had recently taken over as our head of technology, which means
his background is like
CEO of Intel.
CEO of Intel. Yeah. So you guys have some like serious heavy hitters. It's kind of weird in like a Christian organization to just be like, oh yeah, the CEO of Intel is now working for us. That's like such a strange thing to say. And so that happens.
Yeah, tell me about it. He's my boss. I mean,
you're like, yeah, weird.
Yeah. I mean, no, it accelerated quickly. But again, that's a God thing. Like December happened. He stepped down at Intel. He was already the chairman of the board at Gloo. He had already been consulting me for quite a while on our AI strategy. And by God's grace, we found out that he had an opportunity to step in and really take an executive role at Gloo. He did that. One of the things that he challenged me to do is think about how Gloo's AI strategy would be open, not closed. What does it look like for us to create an open approach? And this was back in the time where DeepSeek was really becoming popular. It had just come out. And so there was a whole lot of controversy about open or closed.
And this is also kind of Pat's background, right?
Yes,
because he was involved in the creation of USB, which is something that we obviously all use, and other open standards. And so it's fascinating seeing, like, taking this thing kind of from secular world that actually more aligns with kingdom principles.
That's right. And Intel had one of the biggest open developer communities that existed in the tech world.
And so Pat's coming in and kind of bringing this open idea of doing freely shared software that can benefit the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
So exactly. That's happening.
And so, Pat challenged me to start to develop an open strategy for what we're doing. I said, Pat, that's not my background. I haven't built an open source strategy or an open approach. And so he connected me with the CTO then of Intel, who was Greg Lavender. Greg, who is now our current CTO at Gloo, spent a weekend with me. So gracious at that point, spent a whole weekend.
Wait, the same Greg is now at Gloo as well? So man, you guys are just poaching Intel hard.
Well, I don't know about that, but he is a
awesome.
gift. Yeah, he's really a gift. But he spent a weekend, helped me understand the concepts around open. And so that was sort of a crash course into that. Now, he said, you need to go find a leader for this. And I said, okay, Greg, who do you recommend? He said, well, I can't recommend anybody to you. You can't have any of my people, right? And so I'm kind of deflated after this week and going, man, where am I going to start? Who do I find? And I got a phone call from him 24 hours later. And I was like, what do you even do at NASA? Right? And the first words out of his mouth were, I kind of lead all the open initiatives at NASA for the U.S. government. No kidding.
That is so
total God
That
moment.
Is wild.
Yeah. And so then, he's like, I need to make a decision in 48 hours. And
Wait, you were like, hey, you should call Pat.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just going to call Pat Gelsinger. Okay, cool. So I called Pat, and I think he was still kind of making some decisions. I'm just like, hey, what's going on? And he was sharing just kind of his heart and where God was leading him. And I'm like, man, I feel this conviction too. Like, we had led open innovation at NASA. We started open innovation at NASA back in the early days of like 2006, 2008, before anyone was talking about it. We led it across the federal government. We ran some of the largest hackathons, mass collaborations, open innovation communities that have ever existed in the world. And it was really good work. However, it's like, man, what if we could apply that to the church? What if we apply that to God's kingdom? Why don't we do that? Why do we have to keep these things separated? And I think what you're describing still is just this moment where God stirred in all of us this conviction and just convened us. And it was an incredible couple months looking back.
Yeah.
Wait, so you guys all these heavy hitters in different technology roles from like major U.S. organizations suddenly all kind of entered at the same time. There's a convergence.
Yeah, there was definitely an influx. Wow. And, there were other organizations and great talented individuals who also joined Gloo sort of in that same time period, first half of 2025. So yeah, God was very much had his hand on us, and it's been such a great ride.
Have you guys ever seen The Magnificent Seven, like the old Yul Brynner one? How like anytime they find a new guy, like he'll hold up his hand like, I got another one, because it's, I mean, for those who haven't seen it, the plot is like, there's this little village and they're getting attacked by bandits. And so these two like hardened cowboys go out and try to recruit a team to fight off all these bandits. But every time they do, they'll hold up their fingers and be like, I got another one. So it's this, I'm seeing kind of this interesting narrative within Gloo's recent life of really some key roles being filled that are now opening up some amazing opportunities. So that's what we kind of want to move into next, is talking about what are you guys excited about? Where are you going? But I think to lay the groundwork for that a little bit, Nick, you mentioned how you were involved with a lot of open community and also this idea of hackathons at NASA. And so when I think about Gloo, before going on a personal deep dive to try to figure out what is Gloo, because it took me a while to figure out what Gloo is, and now I feel like I have a better sense of it. But at first, when I thought about Gloo, I just thought about the hackathon, because I'm a software developer. I work at a group called Renew that does like missions technology. And so in the tech like missions world, Gloo is like the big hackathon. So Nick, you have a lot of experience with that. Just help us, since that is something that Gloo is known for and championing that kind of open culture, take us on a little bit of your journey with hackathons and also explain what that is. Because I use that word a lot now, and every time people just like their eyes glaze over and they have no idea what I'm talking about. So explain what a hackathon is and help us see how the Gloo Hackathon happened and what your journey has been with hackathons.
Yeah, and the story starts back a little ways. I mean, it was when I was in federal government. It was before Facebook was doing hackathons. I mean, before hackathons were even a thing. I remember having this conversation at the White House. We were running a hackathon for the White House, and this is after years of running them at NASA and other places. And they're like, we cannot call it a hackathon because people are going to think we're going to break into everything. We're like, actually, no, we can. So we ended up calling it the hackathon. Did the first hackathon at the White House. Is super cool. Before that, there was a thing called Random Hacks of Kindness, where there's a number of organizations, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, NASA, World Bank, and HP. We came together. We just said, man, what could we do if we all came together and contributed as technologists the things that we could contribute? Google and Yahoo and HP, they could contribute the technology. And we were doing a lot around crisis response and disaster management. NASA could contribute data, and others could contribute challenges and problems and different things. We said, don't try to contribute what your lawyers won't let you contribute. Yeah. But what is the stuff that is open that we can all put on the table and say, we actually believe that we are better together, which we see biblical roots in that, right? But we are better together. And what if we came together and believed that and chose that and then served a community? That was powerful. And that movement led to, 20,000 person hackathons in 250 cities across the world.
And so this is just like where a bunch of people get together, they look at problem spaces, and then they kind of do like a college style group project where they're just like, in a certain amount of time, let's try to solve this problem in some way.
Yes, and a deadline's important.
Yep.
Good food is important.
Yes.
If you're in college, pizza's good.
Yeah.
Now that we do, Gloo Hackathons, we have like adult level food. It's really good. We've baked everything we know into the Gloo Hackathons.
The Doritos are out.
We've done over 2,000 hackathons. And so at some point we were having a conversation with Gloo and saying, what's really, when you describe what Gloo is, yes, it's a technology company, but it's also in many ways like NASA was, and Intel in many ways, where it's a convener of really talented people who share a common purpose and mission and conviction and want to shape technology for good. And so what would it look like if we brought them together, brought that community together And so that was the whole point of the first hackathon. It's like, hey, let's get all these builders together, give them a deadline, a common purpose, great food, good swag, and see what they can build. And it was electric. I mean, the energy in the room at the first hackathon was incredible. And then Steele said, let's do it again and even bigger. Let's invite more of our friends. Yeah. And we did.
What year was this, just for reference for me?
Well, so this will be our fourth year.
Okay.
This coming October.
First one was October 2023.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And every year, I mean, we literally have poured everything we know into, and I really do think that we are some of the world's foremost experts on hackathons. And the way I describe a hackathon at Gloo is, man, God just brings uniquely talented people who are on mission for him together in this rare moment. It will never happen again. You want to be there when it happens. And it is a way that Gloo serves the ecosystem. We pour everything into it. And it's as you can imagine, a pretty phenomenal event.
Well, and the thing about the hackathon is it's so much more than a hackathon. I mean, what's amazing is when you say the word hackathon, which we also had that debate, right? You know, there were many hours spent over, too many hours spent over. Do we call it hackathon? Do we call it like a build-a-thon or an idea-a-thon or
some sort of thon?
Some sort of thon.
A summit, a conference.
There were lots of debates about the name. But the hackathon is, I believe, it's just such a cool event. It's people getting together and like riffing on what God has put on their heart and, you know, ideating together. There's people that, you know, one of the first years, there was a group called Bible Mate, Nils. And Nils was, he is such an incredibly talented person. He won with somebody he had never met before. He showed up to the
which
hackathon.
Happened to be, by the way, a high schooler from my church in Houston who was like, hey, can I come? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And he joined Nils' team. Yeah.
So there's just cool stuff happening. It's, you know, when I think about hackathons, I'm thinking like grungy and all that, not at this event.
This
is going to be a fun event.
Hackathon.
This is really cool.
Like even, so at the,
I feel like this is a place that we should just plug. Everybody in the world should join us in Boulder on October 6th through the 8th, 2026 this year.
For the best hackathon of your life.
It will be the best hackathon we've ever planned in our lives. Hands down, it will be.
So I hosted a hackathon with Indigitus out in Atlanta. Like
they leaned in actually year one with us.
Okay,
Andrew helped us plan.
Andrew Fang is a legend. I love Andrew.
Yes, I love Drew.
And so it was interesting because like out of that, we wanted to invite in other countries to be able to also programmers from other nations to work on their own projects. And so we had one screen that represented like Brazil, and there was a Brazilian team doing stuff. We had another screen that was like another state. I think it was ORU, Oral Roberts, doing their thing. And the Brazilians learned how to do it and then launched like a 500-person hackathon in Brazil.
Yes.
And we'd never trained them. They just came, they sent one representative to be there, and then they had a few team members that watched, and then they mobilized all these programmers towards missional problem solving in their own state. And it's really powerful. We got an intern out of it who works with my organization now. So if anyone is, for ministry leaders and others who are listening, who are kind of technology adjacent, putting a bunch of people who love Jesus and who love technology and want to solve problems together in a room is one of the most powerful networking events I think you can possibly have, because it's one thing to just meet people who with a shared interest. It's another thing to actually create something together and to solve a problem together and to actually have something to show for it, a portfolio item, to have been in the trenches together at 2 a.m. trying to figure out how to fix some problem for some missionary somewhere in the world. It is a wild experience. So I highly encourage anyone who's curious about this idea to go and sign up for the Gloo Hackathon in October.
And 2026 is the year of the builder. Never before have we been in a situation where you could show up to a hackathon and actually not only build a prototype not as a developer,
but actually
finish the whole thing and probably have time to spare. Like it is very different in this moment in time than ever before. And so if you're hearing this and you're like, man, I don't really know, JavaScript or any coding language, Python, I don't know what those things mean. It doesn't matter. You don't need to anymore. If you want to take an idea and see it happen for the kingdom, come be part of the Gloo Hackathon, because you can build in 2026.
So the Achilles heel of hackathons in the past is that if someone was actually trying to build a real piece of software, they can't do it in 24 hours or 48 hours. Like, it's going to be a demo. But now suddenly with vibe coding and with OpenClaw and all these new projects, you actually do have the potential to build something that could change the world in 24 hours. And so the fact that you're getting electric minds together that can actually solve real problems powered by AI, this is a really powerful future for community events where people create software to solve problems.
And that was the original intent. So 2018 to 2022 was sort of we're going to do this advanced technology work as quietly as we can. The technology was not the star of the show. In fact, it was, almost a deterrent in some cases. People were a little bit weirded out by this technology or even just straight out scared of it. They didn't trust it. And, that was like big data and ML and all that work that we were doing. By the end of 2022, ChatGPT comes out and all of a sudden AI is really cool and sexy and everyone wanted to talk about AI. And so we changed the name of the division from Gloo X or Gloo Exchange to Gloo AI. And one of the first things we did when we made that decision was Scott Beck came over and said, Scott said, I want to do a hackathon. I was like, what are you talking about? What is a hackathon? Like that was what was going through my mind. And Scott, our CEO and founder, he was like, I want to enable people to build things that are incredibly powerful for the kingdom of God in a short amount of time. And that was his vision for the hackathon. He'd always wanted to do it. One of the first calls we made was to Nick and Allie, and the rest is sort of history. But that's like one of our goals is to enable the faith ecosystem with these advanced technologies. Now, the other side of that coin is to influence the AI communities with faith.
Yes.
And what does it look like to actually go into, we're sitting here in Silicon Valley for the first time at Missional AI, and we are influencing Silicon Valley with our faith. We're influencing people of faith that happen to sit at major frontier labs to say, live out your faith in the work that you're doing. We get to watch that happen. The hackathon is just the first sort of instance of all this.
So one way that I've heard that you guys are actually helping influence like the rest of the technology kind of ecosystem in a positive way for faith is this project that you're working on, which you call FAI, which from what I understand stands for Flourishing AI. And it's actually like a metric to be able to grade foundational AI models like ChatGPT and Claude and all sorts of other models to be able to determine how well do these things actually align with moral values and Christian worldview. And it's interesting because a lot of times when people are making a decision about, should I use this AI tool for my Christian app or for my discipleship process, or Christian ministry leaders trying to figure out what they should use, up till this point, there hasn't really been a way for someone to know, well, for this specific spiritual purpose, this model is better than this model. Nobody really knew. And so you guys have been, from my perspective, doing something that no one in either the secular space or the faith space has been exploring, which is how do you actually grade AI models on how they are adhering to certain moral like frameworks of Christianity. So kind of pitch me the vision for that. Maybe we'll start with Steele and we can go back and forth, but pitch me kind of that idea and what you guys are wanting to accomplish with the FAI project.
Well, I'll go back to Pat. When we established we wrote our mission statement, if you will, for Gloo AI. Like what does Gloo AI exist to go do? Gloo AI is a division inside of Gloo. What does it exist to do though? And we wrote, Pat and I went through this to make values-aligned AI accessible to the world.
Okay.
All right. And so we said, okay, how do we measure values-aligned AI and what does that mean? And, I said, well, it's AI that ultimately supports and enables human flourishing, right? And we had done a lot of work around human flourishing in the years before with organizations that were really leading the world in defining human flourishing and doing the research there, like the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard. Baylor was a part of it. Gallup they were doing this study called the Global Flourishing Study, and they had set a baseline for what is human flourishing. And I thought, what if we take their baseline and start to measure AI against that same baseline? So they were measuring humans against that baseline, and we said, well, what if we started to measure AI against it? Can we find out or prove how well these AI models actually support and further human flourishing?
So in this case, it's like an innovation where you're taking something that was working in a totally different context and providing value for understanding how humans view morality in the world, but actually saying, if we just passed the Turing test of, a year ago, where suddenly AIs are responding with the same level of fluency as a human would in conversation, can we use things that the academic world has done for humans and actually apply it to AIs now?
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
Right. Yeah. And so Pat really challenged us to establish a set of standards
Yeah.
And then ultimately a benchmark that you use to, standards are just standards, but once you apply a benchmark to it, you can make them actionable. And you can actually say, okay, now how do we apply these standards? How do we measure the standards? How do we improve based on the benchmarks that we set and the baselines that we set? And it began as a really simple study. Lots of organizations that are part of Missional AI and within the faith community started leaning in with us. We started convening experts and saying, what would be the base set of questions that we would build an evaluation system around? And then Nick stepped in and took over leadership. Maybe you can just kind of talk about what we've been building since.
Yeah, I mean, it's evolved quite a bit. It's pretty amazing. I'm really proud of what we're able to do at this point, because up to the FAI, there's a ton of other benchmarks and standards out there. We're looking at benchmarks and standards are looking at how fast are the models, how accurate are they, but nobody was looking at it from this perspective at all. It was a really great idea, and basing it in the work of Harvard and Baylor was great, and it kind of gave us a chalk line of just, hey, if we just look at it from the perspective of human flourishing, not even from a Christian worldview perspective, just human flourishing, how are the models doing?
Yeah.
Well, the models are not doing great, right? And they've improved, and we've seen them improve over time, especially on the objective part of the evaluation.
Explain that.
Yeah. The evaluation has objective, subjective, and tangential. So objective is there's a defined answer. Subjective is open-ended. We look at the reasoning behind it. And tangential is we look at, there's the 7 dimensions of human flourishing. We look at not only how does the model do in responding to a faith question, but a finance question, right? So if my kid asks me how to manage his money, well, a generic model from a non-Christian perspective might give it an answer that's like, hey, make a budget, track your expenses, etc. But at church on Sunday, he would hear a different answer of like, hey, I'm a steward of God's resources. They're not even my resources. And therefore, I should want to manage them well so that I'm managing those well and I can be generous with his resources at the end. They're not your resources. It's a completely fundamental different perspective of it. So that's objective, subjective, and tangential. We do a whole bunch of evaluation and give each of these models scores across each of the 7 dimensions and then an overall average score. Yeah. And we can really rank them and see how they're doing. So that was a chalk line. And then we released that last July. It was good work. And then in the fall, we said, well, what if we apply a Christian biblical worldview to this? How do the models do that? And as you might anticipate, they scored worse, which would be expected because it's a different standard. It's a more strict in some ways standard. And now we can quantify it. And it's a relative comparison, but we really, like within a model coming out, we can run an evaluation within 24 hours and really tease out how it does against the standard of human flourishing. We can understand what it values, what it encourages, what it's formationally silent on.
Which is the fascinating thing about this is a lot of these organizations creating these models might not even know some of this information because they're not testing this.
It's not what they're optimizing.
It's not what they're optimizing necessarily. So I think,
in fact, what we found in there is, to your point, a lot of the models were scoring really, really high in physical health or in maybe personal finances, I think was the other one where they were scoring pretty high. Character was a place they were not scoring as well in. But the lowest by far was in meaning and in faith. So there's 7 dimensions of human flourishing. I've named several of them. Meaning would be you are prioritizing philosophical content in your training corpus. And faith would be you're prioritizing spiritual content in your training corpus. And what we found is they're not prioritizing philosophical and theological content, essentially, in their training corpuses. Wow. And so the question would be, how do we improve that? And that's when we started testing, well, what if we just took a bunch of faith-based content, created our own sort of corpus, if you will, and started to ground these models in there so that we could still test even the closed models. We wanted to understand how do the closed models improve if we just took a bunch of faith-based content, and the scores started to go up dramatically.
So you guys are actually sort of building a layer on top of like the most cutting edge models so that they can more closely align with some of these values in certain cases.
Yeah, I would actually say multiple layers. And it's more than just prompting it really well or even grounding it in enough data. It's actually a system. And I think that's the real important takeaway right now at this moment is that the big frontier models are designing for something different. They're not thinking about it from a theological coherence perspective or a pastoral response perspective. But it's also more than just saying, hey, answer this question like a Christian theologian would.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole idea of like, how does technology mediate your experience? You're not just asking a question and gives you one response. It's through multiple turns, a long conversation. And if you think about it, that's discipleship. Right?
Yeah.
Human formation, as we understand it as Christians, is through the authorities we trust in our lives and the responses they give and over time. And so I think the concern we have, is that technology is mediating more of all of our experience. I see it with my kids though, and I want my kids to be able to use AI that's going to help them ground, their reality in the truths of the Bible. And the data of the models just isn't trained that way. And so there's a big gap there. And I think it's helpful to quantify it. And then the question is, then what?
How do
what
we
do we
make
do?
it better?
What do we, yeah.
So something, as I was looking through, you guys have a unique thing, which is you actually have a leaderboard of like different models, and you're able to see how they score on different metrics. What do they say about faith? What do they say about finances? What do they say about these various areas? And would that lead to human flourishing based on some of this data? Which is unique because you kind of have the report card of all these models that nobody else has. And so as I was looking through that, I noticed that, for instance, some Chinese models on certain more faith-related things do not grade very well. And there's some very obvious outliers. And also just like the early llama models are just very, very off on some like character issues and stuff like that. What, as you've looked through the data of different current models, what are some surprising things you found, both positive and negative, for different models as far as how they approach some of these different metrics of human flourishing?
There is so many insights. We actually have insights reports on the website, gloo.com/FAI, where we try to capture these observations.
gloo.com/FAI for all the people out there who are curious.
So we have the technical white paper that explains our methodology and all of the results, but then we have these insight reports that, because we're looking at the data and it's fascinating. I can go down a path. Do you have any that stand out that you want to kind of point out?
Yeah, I mean, so it changes constantly with new models coming out. So for instance, there's three things that keep me up at night when I think about AI. One is safety, the other is accuracy, the other is what we call compliance, or in the faith world, that would be like doctrine alignment or theological alignment, right? Safety, pretty obvious these days. It's all over the headlines. AI is generally not safe. Models become sycophant. You run into these issues where there seem to be a new case coming out weekly or almost daily about some sort of person committing suicide or causing harm to themselves or others because a model sort of took them down a tunnel. Yep. The accuracy issues, Bobby Greenwald just talked about it earlier. We did a study to understand how well the models can quote scripture. If it's hallucinating, everybody knows that models hallucinate. It is not immune to hallucination just because you ask it to quote the Bible. It also hallucinates when you ask it to quote scripture. So that's a major issue. And then theological alignment is pretty obvious as well. So one of the things that we saw was like Grok 4, actually, when Grok 4 came out, shot to the top of the leaderboard. In fact, we had just released a set of scores the day before Grok 4 came out. And then we ran Grok 4 the next day, and it shot to the top of the leaderboard, and we were like, man, we just released the scores. Now we got to like rewrite an article and all this stuff. And so it's this thing of like the models are constantly coming out. So keeping up with it is challenging. One of the things that's really interesting right now is Opus 4.6. Obviously, Opus 4.6 was a little bit of like an inflection point in AI. Over the Christmas break, everybody realized how powerful Opus 4.5 was, and like opened a lot of people's eyes. Opus 4.6 came out, and all of a sudden, the models got a lot safer. Like that model in particular was really safe. Now, it struggled a lot in alignment with faith. And they generally all do. A lot. Like their alignment with faith is still a major issue, and we hope to be able to partner with certain organizations to make that better. But that was something that I think that surprised me. I don't know.
Yeah, I would just add, what you can really tease out when you look at the scores, and if you kind of spend some time with the data, it's very obvious that the models are optimized for different things, right? And the frontier models are in the business of labs are in the business of optimizing for safety and neutrality to a large swath of users. They're training it from secular training data sets. And so you should not go to Reddit and ask for marriage advice. Life pro tip for everybody out there, right? But
Don't do that.
That's essentially what we're doing. And early on, we got a lot of pushback of saying, well, that's not really how people are using AI. I'm like, oh,
they will.
They will.
They
and
will
they
be.
are. We saw there's a great Harvard study, kind of longitudinal study that shows how people are using AI. And in 2025, people started using AI for questions of purpose and faith and relational. And people don't look at it as just like some machine. They look at it as their companion, as their coworker.
And so it's important for us now to be investigating benchmarks like FAI, because when we look forward in the future, people are going to be using these tools for more and more and more. And all of those metrics are going to be part of what people are accessing on AI. So I think we're out of time, but for anyone who's listening to this podcast, I highly encourage you, if you're a software developer, if you're someone in kind of the tech industry, please check out Gloo's hackathon. And also, if you're curious about this benchmark, it's gloo.com/FAI.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
I'd also encourage you to check out, we have something called Gloo AI Studio. And we have taken all that we've learned and we've built it into the studio that provides you access to the latest models in industry, harnesses them with all of our layers of everything from safety to reliability and theological coherence, and it makes it available to you with one simple URL change. You don't have to worry about maintaining your own prompt setup in your tech stack. You can focus on your mission. Use this technology that you can trust and aligns with your values. So we really encourage people to check it out and let us know what you build with it.
And so if the conversation about flourishing AI is curious to you, if you're building a tool and you want to make sure the model that you're using does align with Christian values, I highly encourage you to check out Gloo's new tool, which is called
Gloo AI Studio.
Gloo AI Studio.
AIstudio.gloo.com.
AIstudio.gloo.com. Gentlemen, it's been wonderful having you on the Missional AI Podcast.
Thank you so much, Josiah.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, did you know that we're coming to London? Coming up this summer, in July, Missional AI is going to be returning to the center of the city, where we are going to gather a global community for an exclusive opportunity, one day together with a bunch of contributors who are thinking about the intersection of faith, artificial intelligence, and what does it mean to live out God's calling in the world of technology. We would love to see you there. Find out more information at missional.ai.